Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Gleaming in the dim room, the monitor radiates a bright contrast against the quiet apartment, reflections glinting in the pupils of a user riveted to the screen. Past the window, raindrops dissolve into the night, blending with Pablo Rodriguez's pensive thoughts. Those eyes, now bloodshot, are fixed on the same picture, ever-present coffee in hand. The cups, once 3, are now 1. His grasp tightens around it as recollections flash by, a recent conversation looping unendingly in his mind.
"We don't want the same things,"
reverberated his partner's voice from the other night. One moment they were discussing vacation plans, the next she was telling him she needed space, needed to find herself. The worst part wasn't even losing her, it was losing himself in the aftermath, realizing how much of his identity had been wrapped up in being part of Pablo and Elisa. Sleep refused to come, so online shopping became his midnight companion. At first, it was practical items, a new coffee maker since Elisa had taken theirs, some throw pillows to fill the empty spaces on the couch. But tonight, his browsing had wandered. The cursor hovered over an image that had somehow captured his attention. A shoulder-length wig with soft auburn curls and subtle highlights. The kind of hair Elisa had always wanted, but could never achieve with her naturally straight locks. "This is stupid," he muttered to himself, but his finger clicked "Add to cart" anyway. He hesitated at checkout, staring at the confirmation button. What was he doing? Men didn't buy wigs unless they were balding, which at 32 he certainly wasn't. His thick dark hair was one of his better features, according to past compliments. Yet something about the wig called to him. Maybe it was just the late hour making him impulsive, or perhaps the 3rd cup of coffee. Whatever the reason, he clicked confirm order before he could talk himself out of it. The package arrived 3 days later, a discreet brown box that he carried inside quickly, as though his neighbors might somehow divine its contents. It sat unopened on his coffee table through dinner and 2 episodes of a documentary series he wasn't really watching. Finally, curiosity overcame hesitation. He opened the box carefully, as if it might contain something fragile or dangerous. The wig lay nestled in tissue paper, the auburn strands catching the light from his lamp. For several minutes, he just looked at it, not touching. Then, with careful hands, he lifted it from the box. It was lighter than expected, the hair silky between his fingers. Before he could overthink it, he carried it to the bathroom mirror. Placing it on his head felt awkward, his movements clumsy as he adjusted it. But when he finally looked up, the reflection startled him. The person staring back wasn't quite Pablo anymore. The soft auburn curls framed his face, softening his jawline, bringing out warmth in his brown eyes he'd never noticed before. He turned his head slightly, watching how the hair moved naturally. A strange feeling bubbled up inside him. Not embarrassment as he'd expected, but something else. Curiosity? Relief? He couldn't name it, but it wasn't unpleasant. The wig came off quickly when his phone rang, startling him back to reality. It was just a work call, easily handled, but the interruption broke whatever spell had momentarily taken hold. He placed the wig back in its box, tucking it away in his closet behind winter sweaters, and tried to forget about it. But he couldn't. Over the next few days, the wig's presence lingered in his thoughts, like a secret waiting to be revisited. At work, during his commute, while making dinner, his mind kept drifting back to that moment in the mirror, to the stranger with the auburn hair who had looked back at him. Friday night arrived with no plans to fill it. His friends had tried to drag him out to get back in the game, but Pablo had begged off, claiming fatigue. The truth was, he wanted to be alone, or rather, he wanted to explore this new feeling without an audience. This time, when he put on the wig, he took more care with the placement. He watched tutorials online first, learning how to use the small combs inside to secure it properly. The results were better, more natural. He studied his reflection, turning to see different angles. Without consciously deciding to, he found himself opening a new browser tab. 2 hours and several online purchases later, a confirmation email arrived for items that would be delivered tomorrow: a pink blouse, a black pencil skirt, mascara, foundation. "What am I doing?" he whispered to his reflection. But the person with the auburn hair offered no explanation, only possibility. The packages arrived as promised, and Pablo spent Saturday evening in a state of nervous anticipation. Each item he unboxed felt like opening a door he hadn't known existed. The fabric of the blouse was soft under his fingers, the skirt more structured. The makeup intimidated him most. Tiny containers of products he'd seen used but never applied. Again, online tutorials became his guide. He watched video after video on foundation application, mascara techniques, the basics of contouring. His first attempts were clumsy, the foundation too heavy, the mascara smudged under his eyes. He washed it all off and started again, his hands steadier the second time. When he finally stood before the full-length mirror on his closet door, wig perfectly placed, makeup subtle but effective, pink blouse tucked into the black pencil skirt, the transformation took his breath away. The person in the mirror was still recognizable as him, yet fundamentally different. Softer, more open somehow. Without planning to, he smiled at his reflection, and the woman in the mirror smiled back.
"Magdalena,"
he whispered, the name appearing in his mind from nowhere and everywhere. It had been his grandmother's name, a woman of remarkable strength and kindness who had passed away when he was in college.
"Hello, Magdalena,"
he said softly, and something clicked into place. The name felt right in a way he couldn't articulate. That night, Magdalena moved around the apartment, learning how the skirt restricted certain movements, how to sit without wrinkling the blouse too much. She practiced walking in low heels she'd impulsively added to his order, finding balance with each step. Every movement felt like a discovery, every glance in a reflective surface a confirmation. By Sunday evening, when everything had to be carefully packed away for the work week ahead, Pablo felt a sense of loss. Returning to his usual clothes, his usual self, felt like putting on a costume rather than removing one. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Pablo went to work at the architectural firm, came home, ate dinner, and then increasingly became Magdalena for the evening. Each time the transformation became more refined. He ordered more clothes, better makeup, learned to contour his face to soften his jawline, highlight his cheekbones. Magdalena began to feel less like an experiment and more like an expression of something that had always been there, waiting. The confidence she felt in the pink blouse and black skirt, in the carefully applied makeup and the auburn wig, began to seep into Pablo's daily life as well. Colleagues noticed, commenting on his improved mood, asking if he was seeing someone new. In a way, he was. 2 months after the first impulsive purchase, Magdalena stood in the apartment considering a decision that had been forming for weeks. The auburn wig, now supplemented by proper styling products, sat perfectly on her head, complementing the emerald green dress she'd bought the previous weekend. Her makeup had improved dramatically with practice. Subtle contouring, perfectly winged eyeliner, a rose-pink lipstick that brightened her whole face. The apartment had changed too. Throw pillows in various shades of teal and purple adorned the couch. Framed art had replaced the movie posters Elisa had never liked. Plants thrived on the windowsills. It was becoming a home that reflected a more authentic self. "It's time," Magdalena said to her reflection, the words both terrifying and liberating. It was time to step outside, to exist in the world, not just within these walls. The decision made, she grabbed her purse, a simple black crossbody bag that matched her flats, and headed for the door before courage could fail. The hallway felt impossibly long, each step taking her further from safety. The elevator ride down to the ground floor stretched forever, her heart racing the entire time. And then she was outside, the early evening air cool against her skin. She had chosen a simple destination, a coffee shop 3 blocks away where she'd never been before. Somewhere no one would know Pablo, no expectations would be broken. The walk was simultaneously the longest and shortest of her life. Each passing stranger seemed to look too long. Each car that drove by might contain someone from work, someone who knew Pablo. But minute by minute, step by step, the coffee shop came into view. The door chimed as she entered. The barista, a young man with sleeve tattoos and a friendly smile, looked up.
"What can I get you?"
he asked, no judgment in his eyes, just the same polite customer service he'd offer anyone. "A vanilla latte, please," Magdalena replied, her voice pitched slightly higher than Pablo's, but not unnaturally so. She'd been practicing. "Name for the order?" A moment's hesitation. "Magdalena." "Coming right up, Magdalena." Hearing someone else say her name sent a thrill through her entire body. She paid, then stood aside waiting for her drink, watching the other patrons. An elderly couple sharing a scone. A college student with headphones, typing furiously on a laptop. A woman about her age, reading a book, occasionally tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. No one stared. No one pointed. No one seemed to care that Magdalena existed. "Vanilla latte for Magdalena," the barista called a few minutes later. She took the warm cup with a smile and, "Thank you," then chose a small table near the window. Outside, the world continued as it always had, but everything felt different. She belonged in it now, in a way she never had before. When her phone vibrated with a text, the real world intruded momentarily. It was from Carlos, a friend from college who had been checking in regularly since the breakup. "How's it going? Still on for basketball Sunday?" Magdalena stared at the message, realizing with sudden clarity that the compartmentalization of her life couldn't last. Pablo couldn't keep showing up for basketball while Magdalena stayed hidden away. Sooner or later, a choice would have to be made. For now, she simply replied, "All good. May need to rain check Sunday. Not feeling 100%. She put the phone away and sipped her latte, watching the world go by, feeling more present in her own skin than she had in years, perhaps ever. That night marked a turning point. Once Magdalena had existed outside the apartment walls, there was no going back to being only Pablo. The following weekend, she ventured out again, this time to a bookstore across town. The weekend after that, a movie by herself. Each excursion built confidence, Each interaction where she was accepted as Magdalena reinforced what she was coming to understand. This wasn't just a reaction to the breakup or a phase to pass through. This was who she was meant to be. 3 months after buying the auburn wig, Magdalena sat in her car outside a small office building, gathering courage. Inside was Dr. Helena Rivera, a therapist specializing in gender identity issues. The appointment had been made in Pablo's name, but Magdalena would be the one walking through the door. The waiting room was warmly lit, with comfortable chairs and soothing landscape paintings on the walls. The receptionist smiled as she checked in, handing her a clipboard with intake forms. Name, date of birth, reason for visit. Magdalena hesitated only briefly before writing, "Gender identity exploration." Dr. Rivera turned out to be a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She welcomed Magdalena into her office without a flicker of surprise at the discrepancy between the name on the appointment and the person who arrived. "How would you like me to address you?" she asked once they were seated.
Magdalena,
came the reply, the name feeling more natural every time it was spoken aloud. "It's nice to meet you, Magdalena. Why don't we start by talking about what brings you here today?" The story poured out. The wig, the gradual transformation, the growing certainty that Magdalena wasn't a costume, but rather the most honest expression of self she'd ever found. Dr. Rivera listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly allowing Magdalena the space to articulate feelings she'd never spoken aloud.
what you're describing is not uncommon,
Dr. Rivera said when Magdalena finally fell silent. Many transgender individuals report a similar journey of discovery. The question now is, what do you want your next steps to be? "I don't know," Magdalena admitted. "I only know I can't go back to being only Pablo. It feels like wearing clothes that don't fit anymore." Dr. Rivera nodded. "That's a very apt description. Gender dysphoria, the disconnect between one's assigned gender at birth and one's gender identity, is often described exactly that way, like wearing ill-fitting clothes or looking in a mirror and seeing a stranger." "Yes," Magdalena whispered, tears threatening. "That's exactly it!" "There's no single right path forward," Dr. Rivera continued gently. "Some people choose to transition socially first, using their preferred name and pronouns, dressing in a way that affirms their gender identity. Others may explore medical options like hormone therapy. The important thing is that these decisions are yours to make at your own pace." Magdalena left the appointment with a mixture of emotions: relief at being understood, fear at the enormity of what lay ahead, but mostly a deep sense of rightness. The path forward was becoming clearer. Over the next several sessions with Dr. Rivera, Magdalena explored her feelings more deeply, coming to understand that her gender identity had been an unacknowledged part of her for years. Childhood memories took on new meaning: her fascination with her mother's makeup, the Halloween when she'd begged to be a princess instead of a pirate, the vague discomfort she'd always felt in traditionally masculine settings. 6 months after buying the auburn wig, Magdalena made 2 significant decisions. The first was to begin hormone replacement therapy, a step Dr. Rivera helped her pursue through a referral to an endocrinologist. The second was to come out to someone in her life. She chose Carlos, her closest friend since college. They'd been through everything together: breakups, job changes, the death of Carlos's father. If anyone would understand, it would be him. They met at a quiet restaurant, a neutral location where Magdalena could feel safe. She arrived as Pablo, knowing this conversation needed to happen before she could reveal her true self to him. Carlos noticed something was up immediately.
"You look nervous as hell, man. What's going on? You're not dying, are you?"
No, nothing like that. A deep breath. I need to tell you something important, and I'm afraid it might change things between us. Carlos's expression grew serious. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. That's what friends do. Another deep breath. I'm transgender. I've been exploring my gender identity for months now, and I've realized I'm a woman. My name is Magdalena. The words hung in the air between them. Carlos's expression went through several shifts: surprise, confusion, then thoughtful consideration.
Magdalena,
he repeated slowly. Like your grandmother? She nodded, tears threatening. That's a lot to process, Carlos admitted. But you're my friend. That doesn't change. Really? The word came out small, vulnerable.
Really?
He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I've got questions. Obviously. Probably stupid ones. But we've got time for those. Right now, I just want you to know I'm here for you, whatever you need. The tears came then, relief and gratitude overwhelming her. Through blurry vision, she saw Carlos move to her side of the booth, putting an arm around her shoulders. Hey, it's okay. You're still you.
Just more you, I guess.
She laughed through the tears. That's exactly it. More me than I've ever been.
So,
Carlos said once she'd composed herself.
When do I get to meet Magdalena properly?
2 weeks later, they met for coffee. This time, Magdalena arrived as herself, auburn hair styled in loose waves, makeup subtle but effective, wearing a navy blue dress with a cardigan and comfortable flats. She spotted Carlos at a corner table, watching the door with obvious nervousness. His expression when he saw her was worth every moment of anxiety leading up to this meeting. His eyes widened. Then he broke into a genuine smile, standing as she approached. Magdalena, he said, and the name in his voice felt like coming home. You look amazing. Thank you, she replied, smoothing her dress as she sat down. This is a big step. I'm honored you trusted me with it, he said sincerely. So, catch me up. How long has this been happening? When did you know? They talked for hours, Magdalena explaining her journey, Carlos asking questions that were occasionally clumsy but always coming from a place of genuine desire to understand. By the time they parted ways, something fundamental had shifted. Their friendship hadn't just survived, it had deepened. Coming out to Carlos gave Magdalena the courage to take the next steps. Over the following months, she began hormone therapy, watching with wonder as subtle changes appeared. Softer skin, a slight redistribution of fat that softened her jawline, the beginning of breast development. Her natural hair grew out, and with the help of extensions, she gradually relied less on the auburn wig that had started everything. Eventually, her own hair reached her shoulders, dyed to match the auburn shade she'd come to identify with so strongly. One by one, she came out to other people in her life. Her parents, a difficult conversation that ended with her mother in tears but promising to try to understand, and her father silent but not rejecting her outright. A few close friends, most of whom reacted like Carlos, with initial surprise, followed by acceptance. Work was the final frontier. After a year of living as Magdalena, everywhere except the office, maintaining the Pablo persona during working hours became increasingly difficult. The constant switching, changing clothes and removing makeup before work, then transforming back afterward, was exhausting both physically and emotionally. The conversation with her boss, Mr. Henderson, was one she prepared for extensively. She rehearsed with Dr. Rivera, researched the company's non-discrimination policies, and prepared answers for every possible question or objection.
I appreciate you trusting me with this,
Mr. Henderson said, after she'd explained everything.
I won't pretend to understand completely, but you've been a valued member of this team for 6 years. Your work has always been excellent, and that's what matters here.
They worked out a transition plan for the office. Magdalena would continue working remotely for 2 weeks while HR prepared the necessary changes to email addresses, nameplates, and records. An announcement would be made to the team, and then she would return to the office as herself. The day of her return, Magdalena stood in front of her mirror, scrutinizing every detail of her appearance. The auburn hair, now completely her own, was styled in a professional bob. Her makeup was flawless but understated, appropriate for the workplace. She wore a cream-colored blouse with a camel pencil skirt and low heels, an outfit she'd chosen carefully to be both feminine and businesslike. "You can do this," she told her reflection, and for once the person looking back felt completely aligned with the person inside. The office fell quiet when she stepped off the elevator. Heads turned, whispers started. She kept her chin up, walking directly to her desk with as much confidence as she could muster. Monica from accounting was the first to approach, stopping by her desk with a warm smile. "I love the hair color. It really suits you." "Thank you," Magdalena replied, tension easing slightly. Throughout the day, colleagues stopped by. Some were awkward, clearly unsure what to say but making an effort. Others were surprisingly natural, as if nothing had changed at all. A few kept their distance, discomfort evident in their averted gazes. By the end of the week, a new normal had begun to establish itself. The initial novelty wore off, and work continued as it always had. Projects still needed completion, clients still needed attention, deadlines still loomed. Magdalena's competence remained unchanged, and gradually, that became what defined her in the workplace. 1 year and 8 months after buying the auburn wig on a lonely night, Magdalena stood in front of a judge at the county courthouse. Carlos waited in the gallery, along with her mother, who had come to accept her daughter over time, even if understanding remained a work in progress.
"Petition granted,"
the judge announced, stamping the paperwork that officially changed her name and gender marker on all legal documents. "Congratulations, Ms. Rodriguez." Outside the courthouse, her mother hugged her tightly. "Your grandmother would be proud," she whispered. She always valued authenticity above all else. Carlos took them both to lunch to celebrate, raising a toast to Magdalena Rodriguez, finally official. That evening, alone in her apartment, now fully decorated to reflect her taste, with no traces of Pablo remaining, Magdalena looked at the framed court order declaring her name change. Beside it stood a small photo of her grandmother, the original Magdalena, smiling from beneath a hat at some long-ago family gathering. "Thank you," she whispered to the photograph, "for lending me your name, and maybe a little of your courage, too." The auburn wig that had started everything sat on a styrofoam head on her dresser, no longer needed but kept as a reminder of the journey. She touched it gently, feeling the silky strands between her fingers, marveling at how something so simple had unlocked a truth so profound. Her phone chimed with a text from a number she hadn't seen in a long time. Elisa. "Heard about your transition from mutual friends. Just wanted to say I'm happy you found yourself. You deserve that happiness. Take care, Magdalena." She smiled at the message, feeling no bitterness, only a sense of closure. The breakup that had seemed so devastating had actually been the catalyst for finding her true self. Sometimes endings were really beginnings in disguise. 2 years after that impulsive late-night purchase, Magdalena sat at an outdoor cafe, enjoying the spring sunshine. Her auburn hair caught the light, natural now after growing it out. She wore a yellow sundress that brightened her complexion, a light cardigan warding off the occasional breeze. Carlos joined her, sliding into the chair across from her with the easy familiarity of their long friendship. "Sorry I'm late. Got caught up with a client." "No worries. I was enjoying people watching." She sipped her iced tea, smiling at him over the rim of the glass. A comfortable silence fell between them, the kind only possible with someone who had seen you at your most vulnerable and stayed anyway. "You know what I was just thinking about?" she said eventually. "That night I ordered the wig. How lost I felt. How I had no idea that clicking purchase would change my entire life." Carlos nodded. Sometimes the biggest journeys start with the smallest steps. "Very philosophical," she teased. "I have my moments." He grinned. "But seriously, Mags, you're the bravest person I know. To recognize your truth and pursue it, despite all the obstacles, that's rare." She shook her head. "Not brave. Just desperate for authenticity. Living as Pablo was like holding my breath underwater. Eventually, I had to surface or drown." "Well, I like this version of you better anyway," he said lightly. "Pablo never complimented my outfits." She laughed. "That green shirt really does bring out your eyes, by the way." Their conversation drifted to other topics: work, mutual friends, the latest movies. Magdalena participated fully, but part of her mind remained on the journey that had brought her here. From that lonely night, scrolling through online shopping sites, to this moment, sitting in the sunshine as her authentic self. The auburn wig had been just the beginning. The real transformation had come from within, the courage to question, to explore, to become. Looking back, she could see now that Magdalena had always been there, waiting to emerge. It had just taken the right catalyst to begin the journey. As the afternoon lengthened into evening, Magdalena and Carlos left the cafe, walking together through streets now familiar to her true self. She moved with confidence through the world, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. The auburn hair caught the last rays of sunlight, the color that had once been a disguise, now simply a part of who she was. Magdalena Rodriguez, daughter, friend, architect, woman, continued forward, each step more authentic than the last, the future open with possibility.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!